HMI programming in Sysmac Studio. So on our agenda, we've got a quick kind of overview of the hardware and software features on the NA. We're going to walk through adding an HMI to our project. We'll touch on pages and navigation, how we handle the variables between the PLC and the HMI. Then we'll get into some page development. Then we'll simulate it with our PLC simulator. We'll add some data logging, and then we'll do a quick VNC remote access demo at the end. That's one that I'll be able to do because I have an HMI in front of me, but you guys can enable it on your projects just to see what it will look like down the road. Okay, so this is what our NA HMI looks like on the outside. It comes in 4 sizes, 7, 9, 12, and 15 inch, and you can get a black or silver bezel on it. Now down in the front, you see 3 function keys. So these are completely separate from the screen, and we can program these behind the scenes to do whatever we want. Reset alarms, start a motor, bring up the troubleshooter. It's really up to you. The touch technology used is resistive, single touch, so it's pretty good with water droplets and when operators wear gloves. On the actual peripheral side of it, we've got a USB port for programming. We have 2 USB ports for either devices or memory. So a USB flash drive is commonly used to do trending, and a mouse and keyboard are often inserted into the other USB port. We have a RS-232 serial port on it. We have dual Ethernet. We have an SD card slot on number 5 there, and we have positive, negative, and ground on our power connector there. Sorry, I just saw your question in chat there, Kev. We are using an NX102 PLC, but we have a third-party HMI. Would connecting the HMI be similar to using an Omron HMI? It really depends on the third-party HMI you're using. A lot of different HMIs have Omron drivers built into them. I've done it several times with, Automation Direct screens or Schneider's HMIs. So it really kind of depends on the HMIs, but the development environment will be kind of specific to that HMI. So some of the software features we've got on the NA, so it's running Windows CE at the core. So this gives us a lot of media viewing capabilities. So Word documents, spreadsheets, PDFs, videos, pretty much anything that Windows CE can do. We can have that graphical ability on our HMI. We have automatic global variable linking. So when we've got a PLC and an HMI in the same project, it's very easy to set up the variables between them. We're not importing and exporting tag lists, that sort of thing. It has the typical alarming, trending, history, security that I'm sure most of you are familiar with. And it supports .NET scripting. So kind of a subset of VB is supported on the HMI to do some pretty advanced things. You can FTP, you could run third-party applications, even a third-party web browser we've done before. It has VNC remote access, so just a typical kind of free open source VNC remote access client we can get online with our HMI with, and I'll demo that near the end. It has a feature called an NJ troubleshooter. So this gives you the same interface that you would have with the Sysmac Studio connected to the PLC. So it tells you errors, it gives you information about the errors, and it lets you reset the errors. So in the past, that's often required a trip to site just to reset a fault on the controller and find out what it is, but we can actually build that interface right into our HMI if we want. And we support parallel task execution. Okay, so we are going to get programming in Sysmac here. So we're going to be developing 3 screens for our HMI, 4 screens technically. One of them will be for navigation. We'll have an operation screen for our lift station with identical control to our push buttons on it. We'll have a set point screen where we have some trending as well. And then we'll have a help screen so that they can bug at all hours of the night when their plant goes down. We're going to have a navigation screen. it'll be the background for all the other screens, and it'll keep everything consistent. And all of these screens, just so you know, are in the student material folder that I sent out under session 2. The screen reference PDF has images of all those screens as well. So keep this file handy, because we'll be grabbing documents and images out of this folder to use on our HMI. So everyone can go ahead and open up their project from yesterday, and we'll pick up right where we left off. Okay, so once everyone has their project open, I'll get you to go to File, Save As, and you can just put day 2 at the end of your project, just to kind of keep what we did separate day to day. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is we'll click on Insert, we'll go down to HMI, and we'll drop an NA5 HMI into our project. And then in the pop-up that comes up, we're going to put a 12W101 V1 HMI in our project. The version doesn't really matter, just pick the latest that your Sysmac has. You might not have 1.16, just pick the latest. Then we'll hit OK. And now in our Multi-View Explorer, we have a drop-down menu with both our PLC and our HMI present. So we can use this to switch between them as far as the Multi-View Explorer goes. But if we have our logic open and we have some screens from the HMI open, it just populates a second tab. So we can switch between the screens and the logic just by clicking on the tab. Alternatively, if you have dual monitors, we can undock the HMI development environment and have it essentially beside our logic or on a second monitor. And we'll be actually doing an exercise later on where we do that to speed up some of our HMI programming. Now I'm just going to quickly run through the configurations and setup for the HMI. So in device references, internal devices, you should see your PLC name. Now, if you didn't name your PLC, it's probably going to say new controller 0. That's fine. You don't need to rename anything. And right below that is variable mapping. So I'll get everyone to double click on variable mapping. And we can expand this, and we have user variables here. So these should look familiar to everyone. These are all of the global variables that we created in Tuesday's session. Now, when it comes to using these in the HMI, we can call it whatever we want if you have some custom name for it, but that takes a while. So personally, I like to use the create device variable feature. So if we click next to user variables on the left-hand side here, right click there, right where this kind of black column is, we can do something called create device variable with prefix. So click on that. Now, if you had a specific prefix you wanted to put on your controller, you could have it here, but we can also choose none, which I like to do when there's just one PLC. So we hit OK once we choose none, and now it's just copied the variable name from the PLC right into the HMI. So now alarm beacon in our PLC is alarm beacon in our HMI, just keeps things simple. All of the comments got populated from the PLC comments as well. For our HMI settings, most of these are pretty common to HMIs. You know, our startup screen, do we have the alarm buzzer go off? Here's a pro tip. You'll want to turn that off until you're 100% commissioned, because that'll get annoying. TCP IP, this is where we set up our IP address. We have 2 Ethernet ports, and they can each have a unique IP address. Port 2 by default is direct connection with Sysmac Studio, and it doesn't have an IP address listed. So you can use port 2 when this is checked off for the direct connection method that we talked about on Tuesday. Or if you assign it an IP address, we can use the Ethernet connection via a hub that we talked about on Tuesday as well. So we don't need to change anything in here except for VNC. I'll get everyone to just check off use. We have view only or view and operate. I prefer view and operate. And we can just assign it a password. I'm putting admin on mine. Now, some people are concerned about security with VNC, and that's understandable. If we want to, we can enable registered client logon, and then you could enter the IP address of your programming laptop or whatever computer is going to be making the remote connection, and then it will reject all other IPs and MAC addresses. So I'm just going to put my laptop's IP address in here. That's kind of an additional security step if you wanted to use that. We aren't going to be going over security today, but we can look at this page pretty quick. So it's similar to Windows security, where you have a user account and you have a role. So the role would get assigned a permission level, and the user will get assigned a role. So very similar to a lot of Windows security scenarios. Now we're going to jump right into programming. So if you expand HMI in the Multi-View Explorer, you can see we have pages, and by default, there's page 0. So we're going to need 4 pages. So we'll get everyone to right-click on pages and add a page. And we're going to add 3 pages. So we have a total of 4. And then we're going to rename the pages. One of them will be navigation. And if it prompts you about this overlapped page names, just click yes. We're going to call the other one help. The order doesn't really matter here, as long as page 0 is called main, because that's our startup screen. Set points be another page name. And then finally, page 0 is main. I'll give everyone a second to create those pages. So the first thing we'll do is our navigation page. So I'll get everyone to double click on navigation. And how we're going to do the navigation is we're going to make a page with all of our navigation buttons on it, and then we're going to assign that as a background page to all of our other pages, so everything is consistent, and it saves a lot of development time as well. So in our toolbox, when we're developing our screens, you've probably noticed this now, we have program HMI objects available to us. We have buttons, we have shapes, we have flags, pumps, pipes, motors, valves, that sort of thing. So where we're primarily going to be working out of is standard controls, buttons, and a little bit in the shapes, but these are primarily where we're going to be working. Now you may have noticed under buttons that there are only a handful of buttons, and you might be used to a HMI programming environment where you have a lot of different buttons: page navigation, alarm acknowledgement, start trend, stop trend, eject SD card, that sort of thing. So similar to how we do the contacts and coils, we have one button, and you guys can drag one out onto your screen here. And when we double click on that button, there's not much available to us, just the text, the color, typical visual properties sort of thing. But up in the top left, top right corner of this toolbox window, there's a button that says Go to Events and Actions. So when we click on that, alternatively, we can go to View Events and Actions. It brings up the Events and Actions tab. So we're going to assign a click event to it, and the action is going to be Show Page. So we have one button and we choose the action instead of having an entire toolbox full of buttons that accomplish each of these. So we'll choose a click event. The action is going to be Show Page, and the page name is going to be main. It should start autofilling for you once you start typing. So now we'll just call this button main. Let me zoom in a bit here for you guys. And I'm going to make it pretty big. You guys can kind of choose the font size you like, choose the colors you like. If you want it to be an ellipse button, that's fine. The important part is the action that we assigned. So properties lets us change the font size. I like to make most of my text bold, so it's easier to see. And now we've got one of our navigation buttons done. So I'm just going to drop it down in the bottom left-hand corner here. And then I'm going to copy and paste it 2 times. So you can right-click on it and choose copy, right-click, choose paste. Or if you like hotkeys, Control-C, Control-V will do the same thing. So we're going to make 2 more navigation buttons. We're going to make one to our set points page. And we're going to make one to our help page. Now, when we click on them, we might need to navigate to the Events and Actions tab. And then we simply just expand the action and we change the page that it's going to. And if you want everything aligned, you can select multiple objects, right-click on them, and then choose Align Middle in this case. Then we can just evenly space them so it's a little more aesthetically appealing. So I'll give everyone a second to do that. And if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in chat there. The next thing we'll do is we'll go to the Shapes category in our toolbox, and we'll drop a rectangle on the page. And you can pick the color you like. I'm going to kind of go with a grayscale, but this is going to be kind of a background behind the buttons. So you may have noticed that it is covering the buttons currently. So to change the order in which things appear, you right-click on them, and you can send them back or you can bring them forward. I'm going to send this right to the back. And now my navigation buttons are done. I'll just give everyone a second to catch up there. Does anyone need a little more time? Or is everyone good to go? I'll take it from the silence that everyone's caught up. So now we're going to assign our navigation page as a background to our 3 other pages. So it doesn't matter which one we start at. I'm going to start at main. And just click anywhere on the background and make sure you're in the Properties tab. And there's an item here called Background Page. We're going to choose Navigation as our background page. And once I select that, you can see kind of grayed out our navigation bar that it took from the background page. So you may want to add things like your company logo in the background page, or you know, links to your trends or your alarm banner, that sort of thing. You can really put whatever you want on there, and it's going to be fully functional in whatever page you assign that as a background to. So we'll go to our 3 main pages and assign the background page. Give everyone a second to do that. Okay, and now we'll get into some screen development. So we have 3 pages to make. We'll start with main, as that will probably take the longest. So if everyone can navigate to their main page, just double click on it in the Multi-View Explorer. We'll go into the toolbox, and we'll go into standard controls, and we'll grab an image. We'll drag that out of our toolbox and drop it on the screen. Now, to access the properties of anything, you simply double click on it. So I'll double click on my image, and then it brings up the properties for the image. And you can see here in this red rectangle, none. There's no image selected, so it's not very happy about that. If we click on the 3 dots to the right of that, it'll bring up a Windows Explorer, and I'll get you guys to navigate to the student material file that I sent everyone prior to the sessions. And we'll go into session 2, HMI images, and we'll grab the one that starts with 360, and we'll just open that, and that'll bring that onto our screen as an image. And now we're going to choose the detailed properties, and we're going to unlock the aspect ratio. Now we can freely resize our background image for our lift station. And I'm not going to drag it over top of the screen quite yet. I'm actually going to drag it out of my way while I develop everything else, just so we don't accidentally click on it. And then there's kind of a focus assist in Sysmac Studio where you can't click on something in front of what you have selected. So we have a background image. It can make it difficult to click on smaller objects that are overlaid. So,
hey, Stu, just a question for the image. Did you send that image out?
I did, yes.
Okay.
The student material folder. Does anybody not have that? I can drop everything we need for today in chat if anyone needs.
I'm not a student, so I don't have it, but.
Okay, let me drop
So
all
Stuart,
of these.
I don't think we got that email. We got the lift station program and then a PDF. I didn't see any images that were sent.
Okay, this was sent last week, or no, I sent it Monday, sorry. So let me just, I think I have a Google Drive link I can drop in chat here quick. Okay, so there's a Google Drive link in chat. Anybody who doesn't have the student material can just go ahead and follow that link, download it to your computer somewhere that you can easily access it. And that will contain everything that you see on the screen here. Give everyone a second to do that.
Perfect. Thanks, Stu.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry that didn't get out to you. I thought you were on the list.
Maybe I was.
Yeah, let me know when you've got that downloaded, Chase.
Yeah, we're good to go. Everybody else caught up?
Take that as a yes from the silence.
Yes.
So
let's keep it going.
Yep. So let's grab that image, make sure we unlock aspect ratio, and then we can just drag it down to the bottom. That'll kind of be the last thing we do, is stretch that across the whole screen. So we have a lift station, so we're going to need some pumps and some pipes and a tank and some gauges and some buttons. So Let's start with the tank. If we expand the tank category, I use small tank 1, but if you are dead set on using a different one, feel free to. So let's drop our lift station tank on there. Make it fairly large. Then we'll grab some pipes. If you guys like certain pipes, feel free to use them. I'm just going to use kind of the standard pipes. And we'll have a pipe going down to our pump. Now, before we drop our pump, I'm going to get everyone to go into shapes and drop a rectangle on their screen, right at the bottom of the pipe where the pump will be. And this is going to be kind of our run indicator. The pump will be placed on top of this. So when we have that rectangle, we're going to add an animation to it. So I'll get everyone to go to View, Animations. And that's going to open up a new tab on the right-hand side. And we're going to choose an animation to add, and we're going to choose Color Change Boolean. Now the off color, I'm just going to pick gray, and the on color, I'll leave it as green. That works. And now the expression, this is going to be the tag in the PLC that's going to control this color change. So that's going to be our start motor tag. If you start typing, it'll autofill. Just give everyone a second to do that. When start mode is false, it'll be our off color. When start mode is true, it'll be our on color. And then we're going to drop our pump on top of this rectangle here. So back to our toolbox, let's grab a pump in the pumps category. And I like pump 3 personally for this because it's got a vertical discharge. We'll drop that, we'll resize it for our needs. Resize our background rectangle as needed. And that'll be what tells us when our pump is running. Give everyone a minute to do that. If you have any questions, feel free to speak out.
Where's that animation button? I'm trying to find that here.
Yeah, so go up to View, the Windows menu, View, and then down about midway is Animations.
There it is. Thank you.
And the animation we're going to add is a color change Boolean. Our expression will be start motor, and then you can choose the colors that you like.
Excuse me, can we use something like when the pump has fault or something, the color, it will be red instead of green and so on. Can I add all of those functions?
Yeah, there's a number of ways we could do that. So the next thing we're going to add is actually an indication of the pump alarm. So you can layer your objects and have your animations fairly customized. Let me just check something on color change analog here. So we could use the color change analog if you wanted to, and have multiple colors assigned to different values. That would probably that's how you would do it with just one object. What we're going to do next here is overlay an alarm sort of indicator on the pump, and then we're just going to use a visibility animation on that one.
Mhm.
Okay, so we'll get everyone to go to their toolbox. Let's go to standard controls, and we'll grab a label. We'll drop that on top. Actually, let's put it off to the side until we get it set up here. So this label is going to be our fail to start alarm indication. And we're going to have to modify the appearance a bit. So I'm going to increase the size. I'm going to give it a background color of red and a text color of black. You can do whatever you want with these. Sorry, text color of white. I'll resize it. I picked the wrong one. Background color red, text white. Text black, sorry. There we go. And I'm going to make mine bold. Font's a little skinny. So now I'm going to drop this right on top of the pump here. And your animation tab should still be open. And we can add a visibility animation to this. And this will be our motor fail to start alarm bit. So when motor fail to start is true, this will be visible. When it comes to this expression, we can type multiple variables if we wanted to. We can and or conditions. But because we have an alarm bit behaving how we want it to, we're just going to use motor fail to start as our visibility expression. Now we'll cut and paste this for our level switch low indication. Let's change that to LSLL. And then for the animations, I'm sure you figured this one out, we're going to use the LSLL alarm. Give everyone a second to get caught up with those. Okay, so the next thing we'll add is a tank level indication. So we'll go back to our toolbox and we'll grab, I believe it is a gauge. I'm going to pick the, if you guys have your eyes set on a different gauge, feel free to use it. I'm going to use the black horizontal gauge. I'll put it on the screen. Then when I double click on it, I can change that to vertical. I can also change the pointer, the size, as well as the offset. So I'm going to just kind of play around with this a bit, get it a bit easier to see from afar. I'm going to change the color to blue, even though the contents are not blue in a lift station. And I'm going to offset it a bit so it doesn't cover the numbers. And about there. So drop this on the tank. And now you may have noticed the red rectangle when you click on it for expression. This is going to be our tank level scale variable that we created on Tuesday. We scaled that 0 to 100, and the range on this gauge is 0 to 100, as seen here. Give everyone a second to get their gauge on their tank. Now, it's probably a good time to test everything we've done so far. make sure everything's working the way we want. So we can run our simulator just like we did on Tuesday, but we can run it with a simulated screen. So if you go up to simulation, run with controller simulator, this will build a virtual PLC and a virtual HMI. Now there's only one PLC in this project, so there's only one option for the controller, but if you had multiple PLCs, you could pick and choose what PLC you want to simulate the connection with. It'll take a second here to build the simulator. Now we'll get the same simulation environment with our ladder logic, but we'll also get a little virtual HMI pop up shortly here, and mine's probably going to be on my other monitor, so I'll drag it over when it comes. Okay, so I'll go to my logic for the lift station, and I'm just going to flip those bits that let us clear all the alarms. So the run status and the level switch. My stop push button's inverted, but I don't believe yours are. So we'll reset our alarms from our logic here. And now the HMI has popped up over here. My virtual HMI is there. So we can simulate our lift station from ladder, just like we were doing on Tuesday. I'll put my plant in run mode. And that's actually turned on my motor right away because I didn't have any set points in there. So let's turn the background green. So that works. Now I can simulate the level just like we did with our tank level scaled variable here. So I'll make that 4,000. That'll give us 50%. Oops, not there. Yep, sorry, tank level raw, not scaled. Let's put our tank at 50% and our gauge is at 50%. You guys can walk through the rest of the objects we made there. Our level switch. Pop that off. See our level switch low has become visible. I'm just going to force my fail to start bit here. And my fail to start indicator is visible. Was everyone able to get their simulator up and running? Any issues with that? With the NA simulator?
Yeah, it does take a while to load. Mine's still chugging along, so maybe wait a little bit, let people play around with it.
Yep, for sure. If you've got dual monitors, it's nice when you're doing the NA simulator with the controller simulator. So we're doing pretty good on time here, so everyone can take a minute or two, change your tank levels, trip some alarms, start and stop your plant. You can still do online edits in your logic, and they'll be instantly reflected in your simulator. So Does anyone need a little more time with their simulator? Okay. So in Sysmac in the bottom right-hand side, there's the simulation pane. So you can just hit stop on the PLC simulator, and that should close the HMI simulator as well. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, if you recall from the PowerPoint, we're going to have the start, stop, and reset buttons on our HMI, and the LEDs that we're using to show the status, the green and the red LEDs, are going to be right behind the button. So we'll have essentially an identical control interface on the HMI as well as on the local control panel. So the problem is, however, our start, stop, and reset push buttons are mapped to physical I/O points. We've got them mapped. So if we tried to write to those with the HMI, they would automatically be overwritten by the PLC when it does its scan. So what we'll do now is we are going to duplicate, essentially parallel the 3 buttons, and we'll give ourselves a new unique variable that we can use for the HMI. So if you just copy and paste start push button on top of start push button, and we can just change it to start push button underscore HMI, make those global variables. And we'll do the same with our stop push button. And our reset push button. Now, if you accidentally make a variable as an internal variable, what we can do there is expand variables up at the top, and it will be listed as an internal variable here, and we can simply right-click on it and choose Move to Global, and then it will become a global variable, and we can use that on our HMI. So I'll give everyone a second to create those HMI controls in their ladder logic. Now, I went and created an error in my PLC when I did that. You can tell by the red exclamation marks here. So this would be a good time to point out how we track down errors in the PLC. Not that programmers ever make mistakes. But you can see here, if there's a red exclamation mark in our POUs, program operation units, we can drill down and follow it right down to the program that's it's contained within. And sometimes it will display a red line in front of a rung. So if I were to just leave a blank variable there, you can see there's a red line in front of the rung that has the problem. But we also have 2 tabs down at the bottom called Output and Build. So if we go up to Project, check all programs, it will tell you the problem. And if you double click on the description, it will take you right to it. So that took me to the blank variable. And this took me to the on delay timer that I moved to externals. Okay, so now we're going to do something that I believe is fairly unique to Sysmac. It's a really nice time-saving feature here. So if you can open up your logic for the lift station where we just created those HMI bits, those contacts. I'm going to get everyone to undock it. So click on the tab, the blue tab at the top, and drag just away from the top. Now you can see my logic is undocked, and now I can go to my main page, and it's keeping the logic on top, so I don't have to, it doesn't minimize it or anything like that. Now I'll get everyone to drag and drop their contacts for the HMI that they made. Just drag it out of your rung and drop it onto the HMI. Do that for start, stop, and reset. Then I'm just going to give them better names. When it comes time to change the text in an element, you may have noticed that I double clicked on the text. That's one way you can do it. Alternatively, in the properties on the right-hand side, the text is listed under appearance. Okay, so once you're done with that, I'll get everyone to redock their lift station logic. So if you click on it and start dragging, you'll notice 5 blue squares pop up in the middle of your window. You want to drop this in the center square, and that'll put it back up with the tabs where you found it. So now we've got these 3 buttons, and since they're all the same object, I'm going to highlight them all, and I'm going to bump up my font size. I'm going to make it bold. And if you guys wanted to make your buttons an ellipse or put some color gradients on them or something, feel free to experiment. You can resize them all at the same time as well. There. And if they're all selected, you can also align them. Okay, so when we drop that contact onto our HMI development environment, it dropped it down as a momentary button. Okay, if we wanted something else, momentary will work perfect for this, but if we wanted something else, we do have a few options: set, reset, toggle, or just make it a plain button, which would kind of defeat the purpose in this case. So leave it as is, a momentary button. But it's worth noting that you do have a few options when you drop it into the logic or into the HMI development environment. Okay, so now I'll get everyone to go into their toolbox. Well, let me back up. Is everyone caught up, and did that work for everyone? Okay, I will take that as everyone's caught up. So I'll get everyone to go back to their toolbox and go up to shapes. And we're going to drop a rectangle on top of our buttons, and we're just going to right click on it and send it to the back of the screen. Now I'm going to essentially make it something like that, should be fine. And we'll go to our animations tab, and we're going to add a Boolean color change to it. So our off color, I'm just going to make it black so you can't see it. And our on color will be green for the start button, because that's the color of the start button LED. And the expression will be start LED, should be the tag. Then we'll just copy and paste that We'll drop it behind the stop button. Send it to the back if needed. And then we'll make the on color red for that one and make it stop LED. Okay, so that's everything for that screen. So now I'll get everyone to just expand that background image upward and send it to the back. And we can run one more simulation just to make sure our buttons are behaving properly. So I'll give everyone a few minutes to play around with the simulator, test your start, stop, and reset functionality, and make sure that the LEDs are behaving how they should. If you ever see this error, it's not uncommon. I've got a simulator in another instance running right now, so I'm just going to save and restart the project, and that usually takes care of that. And when you're all done with your simulator, we can press the stop button down in the bottom right-hand corner of Sysmac. Okay, so we are done with our main page on the HMI. Set points is going to be pretty quick, so we'll just do that one next. So we'll get everyone to go to the set points screen. Now in standard controls, we have data edit and label. We've used label before, so we'll drag one of each out onto the page. Now, when we double click on data edit, the white box, it's asking us for a variable. So this will be our high set point. I'll do first. Sorry, I called mine start set point. Yours, I think yours are high set point and low set point. I called mine start set point and stop set point. But we'll choose our variable. Increase your text size however big you want it. And then one last thing, one extra step we need to do with the data edit, the white rectangle here, is we need to choose the display format. So we have a minimum and a maximum value. So for the high set point, it would be a good idea to set that to, say, 50 to 100%. And now in display format, we drop this down, you can see it has decimal places and main characters. So we can choose 3 main characters and 1 decimal place, since we have a real data type. And you can see now it's changed the appearance of the characters within the data edit box. We get everyone to fill in their label, get the size how you want it. And we have to make sure within the data edit object that we assign a minimum and maximum value as well as a display format that'll work for this application. And you probably guessed what we're going to be doing next. We'll copy and paste this. And we will make one for the stop set point. Change the variable to the low set point. Should be low set point in your controllers. And we'll give it a different range. Say minimum 10, maximum 45. Okay, now the other thing we're going to put on this page, we can kind of shuffle this stuff over to the side. The next thing we're going to put on this page is a trend. So in the NA HMI, we can log data to either the USB or the SD card in the back of the HMI. Now it's kind of a 2-step process here. So you may have noticed on the left-hand side in the Multiview Explorer, we have data logging. So right-click on data logging and choose Add Data Set. We can go ahead and rename this data set to tank level. And when we open up this data set, we have a few options. So we can choose where we're logging it to, either the SD memory card or the USB memory. We can specify a folder. I usually just leave this as the default. We can give it a conditional update or a regular interval. And when we have regular interval selected, we can choose an update rate. So 5 seconds is the default, but if this was something that's very rapidly changing, torque on a motor, something like that, we can go as low as 500 milliseconds. You just have to keep in mind that it's going to take up a lot more memory the shorter the interval. Now, the start new database file option over here, these are pretty self-explanatory. So a few different options. After a set number of samples, do we start a new log file? Do we start it daily, or do we do it after a set number of days? Obviously, you don't want a month's worth of data in a single CSV file. That would take a very long time to open and sort through. It would be very system resource intensive. So the default is 1,000 logs per file, and they're saved with the date and time and file number of the day format. So they're fairly easy to sort through when you're trying to narrow down a specific time that something happened. Now on the window on the bottom, there's a little plus sign here. So we're going to click on Add. And the variable we're going to add is the tank level scaled. Now we'll go back to our set points page. We'll go to our toolbox, and under HMI controls, we have a trend graph. We'll get everyone to drop a trend graph next to their set points and just make it relatively big. And we'll double click on the trend graph and that'll bring up our properties. Now we need to choose the data set, and that was what we just created over here. So our data set is called tank level. So when we choose our data set over here, it'll be tank level. And from that data set, we're going to add one analog trace. So we'll hit the plus sign by the analog traces. That's going to bring up this window here. So we'll add our tank level scaled variable. And the name that we're going to give it on the right-hand side will be tank underscore level. And I'm going to make the color blue. Go ahead and close that. We wanted to rename our graph. If we had multiple trends in our plant, we could give it a specific name. So this would be our water tank trend. Call it whatever you'd like. Now this trend is going to display whenever you're on this page, it will display a certain time period worth of data. So you can see on the bottom here, it looks like it's about 1 hour. Yeah, 1 hour. So if we wanted to change that, that's actually a pretty good time base for this. But if we wanted to show a much higher resolution of data, we have the option of the viewport length here. If we wanted to change that, if this was a very slow filling and slow emptying tank, we might want to look at it over a 12-hour period. And then that will pull the last 12 hours of data from either the SD card or the USB or the internal buffer, depending on where the buffer is. Where the current trend data is. It fills up a buffer before it writes to a file. So we can also change our scale. The default 0 to 100 is good for what we need. So we'll leave that. And now when you simulate, you will not get a trend when you simulate. This is just more to have for future reference if you need to set up trending in your project. So we're done that screen. The last one we'll do is going to be help. And I'll get you guys to drop in an image from standard controls. We'll double click on the image and we'll pick from the student file that I sent out, the fake company.png. And you guys can put whatever you'd like in a label surrounding it. Now, the next thing that we'll do is we're going to take advantage of some of the Windows CE media viewing capabilities here. We'll get everyone to go back to their toolbox, and we're going to drag a button onto the page. So the first one will be our PLC data sheet that I would expect an operator to dig through a data sheet. Got a bit bigger. Now, if you remember with our buttons, we have events and actions, and then we have a plethora of actions that we can take. So the action that we're going to assign to this button is going to be show document, either full screen or windowed. I'll do full screen for this one. Then we'll click on the 3 dots next to it. And in the student material session 2, we have HMI documents. And we can pick the NX1P2 data sheet. I think that's actually the NX102 data sheet. I mislabeled it. So we can assign that. And now this data sheet, if you export this project, this data sheet will be exported with the project. So we don't have to worry about keeping this data sheet in the same directory relative to the project file. It's now permanently attached to that project file. So if you send this to a colleague, the data sheet will go along with it. Now we'll make a few more buttons that are very similar. Make one for the HMI. You guys can probably figure out which document we're going to pick for that one. We want to edit the action. We'll pick our NA data sheet. And we'll make one more button. And this will be called pizza. And we will grab the pizza menu from the student file directory. So the documents, if you click on the document button when you're running the simulator, it's just going to open Adobe or whatever your default PDF viewer is. But I'll show you the remote access on an actual HMI running this project so you can see what both the trends and the documents will look like on a real live HMI. So this is VNC Viewer. I'm going to remote into my HMI, which is 192.168.250.2. And it's prompted me for the password that I set. And now it has loaded up my HMI. So this is an actual one sitting next to me here. Probably hear beeping in the background there. So this is what our trends will look like. This is a 1 hour time window, I believe. No, not quite, a 1 minute time window. So this is constantly cycling through the data to keep the last 1 minute of data present. And when I go to change a set point, you can see here I've got the minimum and maximum that we specified there. And when I go to the help screen, if I click on any one of these, it will bring up a built-in PDF viewer that will let me scroll through a PDF. And when I'm done with it, I can just close it, open up a new document if I want. Oh, looks like the data sheet I gave was not a good document for it. So here's our HMI data sheet. So we can view PDFs, Word documents, spreadsheets. We can play movies if we wanted to. So I'll get everyone to wrap up their HMI here, their help screen, and then fire up your simulator, make sure everything works the way it should. Feel free to either type in chat or say any issues you have in chat on the microphone. Okay, did anyone have any questions or is anyone having any issues? I think no, I'm still sharing, yeah. Can you guys still see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay,
Can
well, we got
excuse me, can we convert the analog bar as a percentage in a state of dots? Could be bar or something to indicate the level of the tank.
like a different tank level gauge you're talking about?
Yes, in a state of point like this, like bar or something like that. To be bar or something like that, not only a point or something.
Are you talking about the kind
The
of the
blue
symbol
one.
here?
Yes, the blue one. Could be bar in a state of point.
Look at some of the other gauges, I believe so. I don't think you can with this particular gauge.
We don't have options in pointer type in a state of circle. Could be filling something.
Yeah, I didn't see a fill as an option there.
May I ask to open it again, please?
The properties for this one, you mean?
Yes, yes, and the circle and the pointer type. Pointer type. Here we have this one, a double rectangle bar. It will be
Yeah,
bar.
so
If we increase, say, for example, the level of the tank, it will be like bar or something.
no, that will just be a pointer on that one. I think for that one, what we'd have to do. No. Yeah, let me think about that one for a minute here. There it is. I mean, it was in there somewhere. So taking just a rectangle like this, giving it a color of blue, just kind of drop it right next to the gauge so you can kind of see how they work side by side. So if we add an animation to it and percentage fill, we can use our tank level scale as our expression. Minimum value, maximum value will be 100 or 100% fill. We want bottom to top. There we go. See how that one looks. So we'd have to put if we put a black rectangle behind it, that would probably be better. But we could also overlay that on the gauge and just hide the pointer too. And then that would give us both a numeric and kind of a graphical indicator. So that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
No problem.
So can I invent this object and can I save it and use it as a library for the project or something like that?
Absolutely. So in Sysmac, I'm just going to start a new one up here. So if you had, we can make a new project. Let's call this HMI test. Good. So instead of a standard project, if you're developing something for the HMI, you're going to be choosing an IAG project. And I've got too many windows open right now. It's a bit slow, but we make it an IAG project. And I usually choose the oldest version possible when I make an IAG, just so it's backwards compatible with everything. So we can make those objects here in our HMI. So we could have that, we can assign the tags and everything like that. And then we would simply publish the IAG collection once we've made all our standardized objects. And then in our main project, have over here, just going to stop the simulator. So in our HMI, we can go to Project, IAG Collections Manager. And I've got a few in there already, but we would simply just add, then you'd pick that library that you created. And then you would have all of those objects ready to go in your toolbox. So I've got an IAG right now for the SAVKX, and it just shows up right in my toolbox. So all of your custom objects would show up right in your toolbox here from your library. And if you edited them and created new ones, you could re-import that collection. Go from there.
Yeah, you mean that when I create IAG project objects in the separate project, can I call it in the my project? This way, can I identify new objects by this way?
Sorry, could you say that again?
when I want to create a new object, I
Yeah.
should to create IAG project first, create the objects in IAG, save it, and call them from my project to use them as new objects.
Yeah, exactly. So this is, I'll just make a couple here to kind of show you what I mean by that. But I'm just putting random stuff on here. So this was my IAG collection. Could build them. Sec. And I can publish my collection. And I'll just drop them on my desktop here. I'll publish that IAG collection. And now in my main project, I can go to my IAG collection manager and I can add to my desktop here. There's my library project, IAG. And you can see here are the 4 IAGs that I made. I'll go ahead and check that off. I want it in my project. Close out of this. Now, I don't think I gave it a namespace, which is why it's not showing up.
We have IAG in the bottom. Here.
There it is.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So these are all the objects that I made. Obviously, I didn't do much to them. They're not scaled or anything like that. But yeah. And then if you wanted to modify that library, you go back to your IAG project, add some new features, modify whatever you need to, and then just republish that collection.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad you asked. I didn't think we'd have enough time to do a crash course on IAGs, but you guys kept pace and nobody had issues, so it's good. All right, well, we're wrapped up here. So if you guys want to head out, feel free to. If you want to stick around and if there's anything you want to see, feel free to. I'll stay on for a couple of minutes here still. So thanks again for showing up, everyone. Appreciate your time. And we'll hopefully see you next week on Tuesday for the intermediate programming session.
Sorry, we will get the video and the material like our previous lecture.
Yeah, the recording of this one, the PowerPoint, as well as the project.
And the video?
Yep, there'll be a YouTube video link, just like Tuesdays. Did you get that on Tuesday?
Yes,
Okay.
And it's a very beneficial, it was.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it'll be the same thing for all the sessions. We'll send it out after the session's over.
Yes, thank you so much.
And Jake, I see your question there. Are you still on? Yeah. So for that IAG project, can you make the background transparent? Yes, you can, and you can also make the sizes much different, much more different. I'll show you here. So let's see if I drop this on here. Oh, sorry, it does it automatically. So yeah. Yeah, the background's only shown in the development environment. But you will notice the size of it is that entire window, so it's kind of an awkward size. If you tried to click on your set point, you would, accidentally click on this massive IAG. So in practice, we would actually resize this whole window here. So probably something like 200 by 480, that sort of thing. And then you wouldn't have that massive box around it. This was just a very rushed demonstration. Could even manually size it so it just fits on whatever you're trying to put in there. Then it's a little easier to manage in your project. And yeah, and as far as what you can make as an IAG, it's very diverse. We can use something we're going to learn about tomorrow, structures, which are UDTs, commonly referred to as UDTs. So we could make a UDT for a VFD, and that structure will have all of the tags necessary for that VFD. So if you were calling it in your program, it would be VFD 123 dot speed set point, VFD 123 dot reset alarm. So we can use a structure in our IAG as well. And then when we drop it in our HMI, we'll make a faceplate for that VFD. We'll utilize the structure for that VFD. And then when it comes time to use it in our actual project, the only variable that we would fill in, I didn't assign any variables, so there aren't any visible here, but when you use variables in the IAG, they pop up here in the properties. So you can assign that VFD structure, and you don't even have to, fill in all the different tags. It just grabs it right from the structure, and you can work with custom function blocks that you make using the same structure. And it makes it really quick to just reuse what you've done.
Perfect. May I ask something here?
Of course.
We created the screen of our group of screens or displays in the Sysmac studio. And now I want to send to HMI. How can I send to the HMI?
To download it to the actual screen?
Yes.